let's talk about it. And today I am here with a friend, Aria, and we're going to talk a little bit about Aria and Aria's life. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Happy to have you.
Yeah.
So I know you as Aria. Tell me your last name. How do you pronounce your last name?
Veach.
Veach. And what is your ethnicity, your background? What does that come from?
I'm like a European mutt, but the name is actually Scottish. But it comes from de la Vache, which was French, and actually there were Norman conquerors that came over with William from Normandy, and that's where the Veach name comes from. And there was actually a knight of the Order of the Garter, and that was Sir Richard, and there was also his son, Sir Philip. So the family history goes back quite a while on my father's side.
That's cool.
Yeah,
so
and that's
Veach.
all English lore, so as it were.
Yeah, and then so how did you come up with Aria?
Actually, I'm Jewish. That's my mother's side, and my Hebrew name given to me at my bar mitzvah at age 13 was Ari.
Ari,
And that was actually my rabbi's name.
Okay.
And it means lion.
Okay.
And so now I'm
It's
a lioness.
Aria. Okay,
Yeah.
Fantastic. So educate me, please, and help educate others. What is the difference between transgender and transvestite?
Right. Well, a transgender is someone who's really gone to another level. They've started taking hormones. It's not just about dressing up as another gender and another aesthetic. It's really taking it into their identity. It's not just for fun or a fetish.
Yeah.
It's really a significant part of their life that they can't ignore, and often they end up with some kind of body dysmorphia,
Yes.
which makes it a crucial difference between transgender and transvestite. Transgender is someone that really wants to go forward with a transition.
Yeah, and then a transvestite is somebody who just prefers to dress in the clothing of the opposite sex. Okay, but doesn't necessarily go through the hormonal change, the surgeries, things like that.
Some people think that all transgenders are transvestites.
And that's not the case. Or is it? What's your opinion?
The reality is that I have a Y chromosome, so I'll never be a true woman in the eyes of society as we've constructed it today, because that's genetically very difficult challenge to surmount. But I've come to the terms with the idea that there are more genders than two.
Yes.
So there's more flexibility for someone of a transgender nature to be accepted and have a role in society. It's not so polarized.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time you ever encountered a transgender?
Sure, actually, and I never really thought that this would happen to me at that time. But I was studying in Thailand, so you know that you see ladyboys.
Yes.
And it's hard. Some of them actually dress up, and other ones are completely transgender, and they are unfortunately a lot of times in the sex industry. So that's really sad.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to them, because I'm sure there's a big struggle with medical care in those places. But anyway, like years later, I recognized their beauty actually from the beginning, but just was curious. And in America, we don't have that kind of exposure, at least when I was traveling at that time. So it was new for me, especially growing up in a high school where everyone was hating on gay culture or homosexuality. And even though I wasn't identifying that way at that time, I had a friend who was, and it made it difficult for him, I'm sure.
Sure. And where did you grow up?
In Armonk, New York.
Okay.
Mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never heard of it. Where is it? What is it close to?
It's an Algonquin settlement,
Okay.
But it's outside of New York City, so not far in the suburbs of Westchester.
And so was the person you were speaking of the only gay person you knew in your school, or was there a gay population?
A small gay population, I suppose.
But no transgender?
No.
That you were aware of? Okay. Yeah. And then well, before I get into more transgender, I want to talk a little bit about you. What do you do for work? Because if I recall, you're in science, right?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about...
On a day-to-day basis, I do mass spectrometry.
Which is?
Right. So I work at a biotechnology company, and I work specifically to characterize all the molecules, like antibodies that are going for immunotherapy for cancer.
Yes.
So I want to know at the atomic level or amino acid level all the changes structurally, what's going on with this molecule from a quality control perspective. So it has to go through me before it goes to the clinical trial. So that's what I do, and I use this technique called mass spectrometry to take a protein and chop it up into little pieces so I can see all the details. Wow. And so that's what I do in my day-to-day life.
Yes.
And it's part of the process development organization and the manufacturing of this biotech company, which is quite large, and I feel like I'm participating and able to actually get somehow close to the patient, but that's not exactly what I've been working on in my spare time currently. So.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've been working on in your spare time?
I'm putting together a first album, so my music. So it's my piano and a lot of electronic music production.
Yes.
And even some rap in there
I
to
love
kind
it.
of get my frustration out about my gender crisis.
Sure, absolutely. And so when you started with the biotech company, did you start there as a man or did you start there?
I actually started there as a man.
Okay.
And there was no transgender policy at all. I found myself interfacing with the human resources department about basically building the policy with them. And then by 2017, we now have a transgender policy and healthcare coverage of certain procedures that were not covered before. I haven't taken advantage of that yet because I've been very slow with my transition, actually, very careful, and all with the hormones, and also have not done any surgeries at all.
Right.
Not to say that I don't want to, but I don't see why it's necessary.
Yeah.
So I'm still struggling with the cosmetic versus medical need.
Sure.
And I'm sure that's probably depends on each patient.
Right.
Where each stands. But one thing that I've found is that I think that our hopefully one day it shouldn't be specific to gender.
Yes.
I think if anybody wants some kind of procedure that they think will help them psychologically, it should be there should be some incentive for that, whoever you are.
Right. And so now that policy is open in your workplace, have more people come out to be transgender, or are you the only one?
I don't think so. Even though there are several thousand people at the company, I think that there's still a small fraction, and that's why these policies, like in the military, shouldn't have a big impact because there are only a small percentage of the people that actually impact the policy.
Yeah.
But so overall, the cost is very low in the whole system.
Right. And you brought up something that made me think when you talked about, if somebody wants to go through this, it shouldn't be a matter of gender or whatever. And you said something about the psychology.
Yeah.
Was when going through that change and really deciding, this is what I want to do. I want to live my life as a woman because it's not the norm. How do you deal with your own psychology and feeling, am I crazy? Am I...
No, I was very paranoid because, like I said, I was working as a man.
Yes.
And actually more of a cross-dresser for a time when I was living in North Carolina, one of the best places to transition.
Gosh.
And I felt very isolated, actually. And I was dressing up and taking everything off. Or if I had nail polish, I would have to remove that for sure by the morning. And I was very paranoid about my arm hair. I would shave it off, but then would fear that somebody would notice at work all the time. So I was always very conscious about that, just because I was trying to escape judgment or ridicule or any kind of loss of respect in my employment.
Sure.
Especially when I'm a very ambitious corporate person who wants to actually accelerate my career.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a challenge, and I have had therapy. I've never had to have therapy before in my life, and then now I've basically just used it for life coaching and gotten stronger in terms of resilience and facing any opposition. But I have lost friends.
Yeah.
When I transitioned, if people weren't on board, then I let them go.
And that takes so much courage, and my hat goes off to you so much because, there are so many people that have been in your life for so long. I imagine that all of a sudden, your family, and
it's the hardest for them.
Yeah.
Even though they've known the longest, practically,
right.
They've been the slowest to accept it.
Yeah. And so when was that time period for you that you started going, okay, I'm not wanting to be a man, a boy, I don't...
Well, I would say that it was more recent. It wasn't something that I didn't have the vocabulary to voice that idea when I was much younger. And it wasn't until I had reached such frustration as a man at like age 27 that I decided, okay, I'm done. I'm just absolutely done with this. There's so much I don't want to feel in terms of like I guess that could be effects of the testosterone that's in my system. But I just wanted to move away from that, and I sought out a medical solution which involved hormones. So that was really pivotal for me. And I was doing it in secret, of course, at first in North Carolina, but then was able to open up and find a provider that could steer me in the right direction. Actually, one of the first things I did when I moved to Los Angeles for the job that I now have, I went to the endocrinologist the day I got off the plane, because I knew that my life here would be starting, it would be a new journey for me. So I really created a definite separation from my life as a man, and then changed my whole environment completely.
Yeah, wow.
And ultimately South California, this area is very accepting.
Yeah, and getting there. I still think there's work to do.
Yeah,
but
and I have had scary experiences here.
I bet.
Recently, actually.
Feel free to share.
So it was really surprising because I was just in Turkey a few months ago, and everybody warned me not to go because it could be dangerous, especially for someone like me. And I had the most wonderful, amazing experience. The people there, the men there, were very aggressive with me, but they didn't want to hurt me or anything. In fact, they were attracted to me. Yes, crazy.
Yeah.
And so I actually felt very safe. Yeah. And I come back to LA, and I'm at a gas station. And this guy starts staring at me, and I thought that he had a gun because he was blasting some music and looking at me very fiercely. And before he drives away, he actually stops the car like abruptly and starts yelling at me. And he's like, "Who are you fooling? You're not fooling anybody. You're not fooling me." Like, I was putting gas in the car. The lady next to me on the other pump, she's like, "What is his problem?" And he's literally like yelling at me about, and I was frightened at the time because, like I said, I didn't know if this kind of person would be violent. Right. And those are the exact kind of people or men that I have taken, my whole life purpose to be basically like move away from those type of people. So, because I think that violence stems from hatred and it stems from their own hormone issues, So
well, that projection, all that anger is coming out at you, and it's coming from a place of.
Well, I think he felt fooled or something, and I wasn't trying to.
Like he was attracted to you, and then realized you might have been a man, and then he's had to look at himself and then get mad at you.
That's essentially what I believe happened.
That's great, and I get it.
But I didn't have anything.
Crazy.
I wasn't taking any action or doing anything at the time.
Absolutely, to provoke it, you were being.
In fact, it was one of my off days. So,
right.
And the reality is, why should I have to look like a woman anyway? That's a stereotype. Yes. And he's totally, and I'm subject to all that chauvinism now, and I don't like it. The reality is, like, I should have a freedom to look like whichever gender I want, first of all, and I shouldn't have been, accosted that way.
Well, and that it's nobody's business.
But that's why so many transgenders are afraid, and I'm lucky because I'm not dead, basically, because there are a lot of hate crimes out there, and that's why in that situation I can't predict what's actually going to happen. Right. And those are the moments that I think we all fear. We think we can live in this safe life, but the reality is there's a lot of hate out there, and you just kind of have to glide above it.
Wow. And so do you feel like there's the most pushback from male over female toward you?
What do you mean pushback?
Okay, so here you're pumping gas and you get somebody, aggressive at you that happens to be male. Do you find that people that have interactions that don't feel good are more from the male perspective than the female?
Actually, it's hard to say. I think I've had plenty of situations, dating-wise, let's say, where a woman finds out that I'm actually a trans, and I'm interested in dating women. So it's like they get very upset sometimes because they feel that I've fooled them.
Uh-huh.
That I, in some way that I've lied to them, and that I'm also usually like evil or something because like I'm changing nature and not
right.
like.
And so then
no, I wouldn't. I think that both sexes are equally disturbed by transgenders disrupting this whole very ordained type of relationship that we've had for thousands of years. But in reality, I think transgenders have been around for that long too.
Yeah.
It's just our methods of changing and adapting to our own identities or our own image has actually gotten more advanced.
Right, right. And so you mentioned that you're attracted to women. That's who you prefer to date. You're not attracted to men in a sexual way, or sometimes.
I don't know. That guy would have to be pretty tall.
That's funny. So then in the dating world, it's like, is that something that you feel the need to automatically disclose, or is it like, how do you walk into that situation in dating?
I don't. I'm just working right now.
I have time.
I really don't. Oh no, I think courtship would be great, and that's one thing that has changed in my life. Like I used to, do the courting, be the aggressor, and now I'm playing the opposite game. So I'm learning in that still, and I think that since being transgender is like going through adolescence all over again, I'm sure my dating life will evolve as well.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, amazing. And so I was going to ask you, when was the last time you felt discriminated against, but that scene at the gas station was pretty
recent, actually.
Recent.
Yeah.
Is there any other circumstance you'd like to share, or?
Well, I mean, I think it's easy for me now because I'm far in my transition, but in the early parts when I had short hair, I got punched in the face at a club. Jesus. And I'm not really sure what I did. I was out kind of by myself, actually, at this club. But I didn't say anything to the person. But I think that I was being a little defensive in my space that I was dancing, but I happened to have makeup on. But I don't see any reason for that kind of violence in the situation. Well, so, I just walked away. I was like, really?
Yeah.
Seriously, because I'm a very strong person, and even though you could, knock me back and surprise, like a coward, like.
Well, it's interesting because it's like I've never been a man, I've only been a woman, but I can say from just being a woman in a club scene how many times that if you're dancing with your girlfriends or whatever and a male approaches you and you don't give them the time of day, how offended and ugly they can get just at you saying I'm not interested.
Well, I get that all the time in Facebook also. It's like I get messages from people, and I'm sorry I don't have time to respond to everybody.
No.
But it doesn't mean that I deserve your immediate fire of and terrible words. So some people are very controlling, and that's also the possessive nature I think I had as well as a man, and kind of have grown. And I don't know if that's because of my gender transition or just maturity, but I definitely feel like more exposed to women's issues and kind of seeking balance in any relationship.
Yeah. And when you were searching for a therapist to help you through this process, were you able to find one pretty quickly, or did you have to go through enough until you're like, you're kind of speaking my language now?
I've never actually found somebody that would be convenient for me, in a place that works for me and is a woman, since I want a woman to be a therapist. That's my personal information. But no, I mean, I just have I found life coaches, but I don't really. I'm not sure that I ever found specifically transgender support. Yeah. People always say go to these blogs or forums or things like that. Oftentimes those sites are even shut down. Or when I did actually go out to these agencies to look for legal help to change my name because the forums can be complicated, they got no responses at all. And actually, in the transgender community, I don't see a lot of people like me who also like women, for example. So then I don't really have a team of trans girls or sidekicks or whatever, wing girls.
Do you have a transgender friend community in general?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
and you found
But
that
I don't see the need to stereotype people by gender in order to
be
be friends or anything
Agreed.
like that.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been open with all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And mostly I'm interested in collaborating for music and staying focused on my mission.
Yeah,
So.
I love it. I love it, and not having it be about what I am.
Well, to be honest, like the whole sex and thing, I'm pretty much sure that at this point, I've been engaged, by the way, to a woman. I was engaged, and at this point, I just think that because of all my ideas about technology, I'm really not sure that this whole marriage thing is for me, because to end the whole men thing. Because now as a genetic engineer, I see the potential to synthesize sperm. Mm-hmm. So really, since we don't know how to create babies like artificially, we still need women as manufacturer. Yes. So like, forget the men, we'll just synthesize the sperm.
It'll be a woman culture.
That's where my life is going, so anyway, those ideas come from a place of just, I think, frustration in my life as a man, the expectations and also the feelings, and just I froze my sperm, so I don't really. I could still, go back to that. Yeah. And I think that the body is really robust, and that's how amazing, anybody can change so much. So it just takes about like 6 months to a year, and then you start seeing these amazing changes in your.
Do you know of anybody that's made the choice to go transgender and then chosen to go back? Like,
I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are unhappy. For me, because I've evolved, like I'm not strictly trying to say, oh, I'm a woman. Mm-hmm. A lot of transgenders would be very offended, and there are all kinds of transgenders with different opinions about this.
Sure.
Some think that a transgender who hasn't had the surgery is not a real woman, and meanwhile, I don't even think it's possible to become a quote real woman, and there's this concept of a woman with a penis, and just like let that be. Some people are so offended by that concept, and and so I'm trapped in that myself, just seeking acceptance in a way, but also going about my business. But at the same time, I'm so happy that I don't really care about the judgments. Yeah. And in reality, I could end up changing back later in life, and if I had a need for that, I don't see why I wouldn't be able to do that. Sure. It would make my mother, I'm sure, very happy. There are certain people in my life very happy. Yeah. But I don't think it's necessary right now.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit about that as far as who has been the people that have been the most supportive in this whole process and who have been the least.
I don't know where my support comes from. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why I look out to my fans so much, because my personal life, the people in my immediate life do not support the transition. Wow. So every time I have a major event or want to share something related to my transition, or maybe even like a dress or something, it's shot down. Yeah. So, and that's changed over time. Mm-hmm. It's gotten a little better, but at the same time, there's news out there about me being bigender, so that only strengthens their resolve about me transitioning back to a man. Right. But it's not going to happen right now. Yeah. So I've learned to be flexible, because there's no reason to get bent out of shape if somebody calls me he or she. Yeah. Sometimes I have in the workplace, like I wanted people to respect this change that I had, and ultimately I've been successful in that, but it's been a lot harder in my family.
Interesting. So. Yeah. So many people have ideas of who they think you should be, right?
Yeah, and that's actually, even in I had a funny situation recently, and I was playing a video game, and in some of these video games you join teams and stuff, and this one guy who thinks he's all that, or tells me I have to change all of my stats essentially to be something else, and I thought, and of course that stat was stamina. So he's like, I want you to max out all of your stamina, and I'm thinking, oh God, I already avoided that for one reason in real life. Now you're telling me. So people are very controlling, not just in that superficial way in that situation, but people tell me not to transition. People tell me to transition more. They always tell me like what I should be doing. And especially in the acting world, because if you have coaches, they're trying to steer you in certain directions as well. So you always just have to be the ultimate decider.
It is. So that's a two-part question. What has been the in acting? What is the coaching that you seem to get the most?
Unfortunately, I'm not doing too much scene study right now. Well, let me see. Well, I would say that I've done this improv class recently. I mean, just the say yes and being open is really a very enabling solution for all of life, because it opens possibilities and doors.
Yeah. And then where do you go for, like, you know, some people believe in God, some people believe in Allah, Judaism, you know, Buddhism. Where do you go, and if it doesn't have to be a religion, to get that answer for what is right for you?
Well, you know, I was raised Jewish, but more and more I'm just trying to integrate my Judaism into a mindfulness practice. And so my mindfulness practice just helps me stay focused and clear-headed. And it's not that I have intense meditations or anything like that. It's just that I try to stay grounded with and very present. Yeah. And that combined with the improv training is actually very powerful to stay in the moment and hopefully, you know, make good decisions.
Yeah, that's great. Who has been the biggest mentor in your life?
Well, I've had different mentors for all kinds of activities because I've done science and I've had several mentors who took me through graduate school. Okay. You know, and also I have my mentors from these companies who are really brilliant scientists as well, working to advance these medications. And then I've had role models and musicians out there that are just my inspiration.
And what kind of music really inspires you?
So since I moved to LA, I've been listening to a lot of trap music. And like hip hop. So now I actually find myself getting, you know, trap beats and trying to produce rap music. I love it. It's a little bit fierce, but I think it gets my point across. Yes. No, but I have other music as well. So I mean, you know, like some pop and some classical, of course. You know, those are role models, but they're long since gone. Yeah. But they kind of keep me grounded in my music as well. Yeah. So, yeah, politically, I'm not really aligned with any faction currently. Why? So, yeah, I don't really have too many opinions there. Although I do think that, yeah, I just try to stay away from the political climate right now. But I have plenty of ideas, and I just really want there to be a more peaceful solution to a lot of the conflicts currently. So and what are you most proud of in this whole journey that you've gone through? Not only becoming transgender, but in your life. Like, what are you most proud of in your life? Well, it's hard. I mean, I think I'm very proud of my education because that laid a foundation for my career, which enables all the other pursuits that I have now. Right. So I'm very thankful for that, and obviously the lessons from my parents, you know, that are so invaluable. But I would say that more recently, my transition itself has been the biggest growth experience of my life. It's opened me up to everyone else's own journeys, and that they have their own struggles, and this happens to be mine, but I've seen that as a way to parallel and bridge between, you know, connections between other people. Yeah. So even though it's just my gender, which is not something to be proud of, it's just it took a lot of effort to change and a lot of patience, and that's something that I had to learn. For sure.
Patience and change are two big things.
But I'm hopefully going to be proud of this album that I'm putting out soon. Yes. So that is what I'm working on now. Yeah. I'm very excited about.
Oh, that's amazing. Congratulations. Thanks. And to any transgender parents or parents of transgenders, what would you say to them if they're having a hard time understanding their child's transition?
Yeah, it's sad. I think that sometimes you might need some space apart. Okay. Actually. Yeah. Because if you're really not willing to listen, then you may be in denial.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the earliest problems, and denial makes the conversation very difficult.
Yeah.
Because one person, the transgender individual is saying how they want to change, but literally the parents may not be able to accept that.
Right.
So in that situation, it's really an independent journey, and nobody can decide to be transgender but that person.
Right.
So ultimately it is that person's life, that person's choice, and they take responsibility for their future.
Yeah.
And the parents, of course, just have to look out for, number one, the health.
Yeah.
Anything, being safe and doing it properly is ultimately should be the number one concern. And obviously just open love.
Right.
There shouldn't be any reason to put the child down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's their own fears that's getting in the way of allowing love and understanding.
Yeah, or those desires to change them into what their image is. Because, of course, parents are always trying to mold them into something. So. Yeah,
because when they come out, we have this idea of who we think they should be, right? And as soon as you step out of that, especially really far out of that, then I've gone wrong. And it's like, no, it's not about you.
Right.
It's about your child. And I think that's where the disconnect happens, is they make it so personal.
Yeah. But I think that the transgender individual can also try to hear them out, because really for me, for example, I was thinking about it years before I told them.
Right.
So it may seem like news to them, but it doesn't to me. So you have to be very sensitive and deliver have that conversation carefully. Often I found it best to just tell people individually so that I could understand and gauge their reaction and respond appropriately.
And that's a good point, because you had transitioned a long time before you made the transition, or started the process.
In my mind.
Yes, and so for
very
you,
secretive, and that's the way a lot of people are.
Yeah, and it's like a breakup. Like when you're going to leave a relationship, going into it, this is coming to an end, and then the other person's like, you came out of nowhere. It's like, no, I've been going through this. Yeah, interesting. Wow. So. I find you beautiful. I'm watching you and I'm interviewing you and I'm looking in your eyes, and I hope, or I'll ask you, do you see yourself as beautiful?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I like how I've changed, but it's a different beauty because, I used to have a beard.
Okay.
Like I had a
when
really,
you were
really different
wore
look.
A beard. Okay.
Well, not too long because I trimmed as Metro.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's just interesting to see how the image of yourself can change as well.
So much, right?
And I've accepted this, and I prefer it. So
yeah.
And everything that goes with that.
Right.
So, which is a lot.
Oh wow. So I've asked you several questions. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share, whether it be about your gender or just about you as a human being, that you would like to? We've talked about your music and your art and your science. Like, what is there anything else that you'd like to share about who you are?
I just love being creative.
Yeah.
And it's all about, first of all, improving humanity. Mm-hmm. So through my medical life, and then creating art.
Are there any artists you'd like to collaborate with?
Sure, there are always artists that I want to collaborate with, but I'm also working...
Let's hear it. Let them know you're looking for them.
Well, Ada, would you just read my message? There's this Ukrainian star right now, Aida, that she got famous on X Factor.
Okay.
But she has the most beautiful voice, and I actually just composed some stuff for her. Okay. And she wasn't able to. She talked to me, but she wasn't able to actually get the file.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, let's do this.
Yes.
And actually, there's always collaborations. I think I've tweeted Justin Bieber. He lives around here, right?
Justin.
I'll give you piano lessons.
Love it. We'll work with the Biebs. Well, this is great. We're going to probably wrap up this interview, but we're going to get you, a little bit of you playing the piano, because I would love to hear what you've been working on and hear what moves you. Okay. And so we will close up another episode of Let's Talk About It. This is Amber Wegner, and you can find me on social media, Instagram, Amber Wegner 777, and on Facebook, Amber Wegner, and that's spelled Wegner. If there are any other topics that you'd like to discuss, please private message me. If you have more questions for Aria and you'd like me to have her back, please message me about that as well, and let's talk about it.